Hello literature connoisseurs. Let's begin chapter 13 of Tribulation Force. The chapter begins with Buck getting chewed out by his boss about the damn cookie. It's really sad that this drivel amuses the authors so much. Why are Christians so lame? Scene changes to Rayford as he feels inferior to Hattie as he sits with her. He's upset that she is no longer beneath him like when they were working together. It's sad that Christians need this superiority over others to make themselves feel any worth. Instead of two people being equal and just being friendly with each other, Christians feel the need to subjugate others. What a sad, miserable existence they live. How embarrassing that this is the best their religion can produce. Hattie continues where they left off at the end of the last chapter. Only she makes a strange statement. "I still like you in spite of how you dumped me," she says to him. Considering that it has been stated numerous times that 1. That they were not dating and the whole affair was in Rayford's imagination. 2. Rayford behaved as a narcissist the whole time they were friends in the last book. So the authors are rebranding Hattie, again, probably because they keep getting called out on their bullshit. From that sentence it makes it sound as if Rayford and Hattie were dating, although they previously established that Rayford had an imaginary affair in his mind. Hattie knew nothing about it. Rayford stopped being her friend because of his imaginary affair. And ultimately, Hattie was apparently dumped because of the imaginary affair, but they were dating all along. Honestly, try telling me that this Christian backwash of a novel isn't convoluted. Hattie goes on to say that she would never do anything to hurt him. Rayford points out that filing a false complaint did hurt him. She counters by saying it was a joke. This makes Rayford bring up the note she left him after the test telling him about the new Air Force One. She again says it was all a joke, but Rayford shuts her down. He doesn't really do a good job of it, all he says is that it isn't like her. What is that based off of? His imaginary affair? She tries to apologize but he refuses to accept it. He demands to know why she did it and she remarks that she doesn't have to answer to him. Rayford becomes even more indignant and demands to know about the flowers and the candy. Hattie seems a little startled but Rayford keeps pressing her. She finally remarks that she does as she is told. It becomes crystal clear that Nikolai was behind it all. Rayford wants to know why Nikolai is after his daughter and it gets revealed that Hattie is dating Nikolai. Rayford swears to keep that secret if she tells him why Nikolai is sending candy and flowers to Chloe. Hattie brags about Nikolai being very smart and that Nikolai wants Rayford as his pilot, for some strange reason. So Hattie reveals that the plan was to trick Rayford into wanting to move out of Chicago. Hattie makes the statement, "He really wants you as his pilot." Rayford then says okay, meaning that he's following her. But the authors turn this into another one of their lame jokes by having Hattie believe that he's agreeing to accept the job. You know, the same job he has already agreed to accept because of the mob boss tactics used. This whole section is ludicrous. Skipping past more of the nonsense, we learn that Nikolai has decided that he is keeping the new Air Force One as his own and Rayford with it. So Rayford asks if Nikolai knows that he and Hattie had been dating. Hattie replied by playing dumb and asking Rayford if they ever had a thing. This is beyond stupid at this point. The authors can't even keep their story straight. The mark of very poor liars. Scene changes to Buck as he interviews Rabbi Mark Feinberg. He is the guy in charge of rebuilding the Jewish temple. The rabbi starts out by saying that today he is a politician but not sure what relevance this has because he immediately starts talking about his belief in God. He says he believes that God is a person. A real being, not a concept. He then admits that the Jewish God does not tolerate other gods and religions and cannot be part of a one-world religion. He then backpedals and says that the religions can tolerate each other. So then which is it? Will God and his religion tolerate other religions or not? So typical of a politician, we are not getting a clear answer. He says he will cooperate with other religions, whatever that means, but will not accept their beliefs. Not sure why his opinion should matter since the authors have decided that the only one world religion will be Christian only. Unless this rabbi is a Jew for Jesus, then he is not allowed to cooperate or join in with the one world religion. So Buck asks if he would join the one world religion if the leader were Christian. The rabbi shrugs it off, saying that he already knows that the new pope will be the new leader. He then adds that he'd join if the Messiah was Nikolai. He claims that Nikolai has done a lot in such a small amount of time that he could fulfill the messianic prophecies. The rabbi brings up that another rabbi, Ben Judah, is putting on a press conference to reveal what his research has revealed about who the Messiah is. Buck becomes put off because the rabbi is not telling him what he wants to hear, so he changes the topic back to the temple being rebuilt. He asks why the temple being rebuilt is so special. The rabbi gives a history lesson to Buck about the temple and what it means to Jews. The rabbi needs to get into a cab and ride to the Temple Mount. He offers to let Buck ride with him if Buck pays for the taxi. Can't help but feel this is a slight at Jewish people, following the stereotype that they are cheap. Buck agrees but needs to make a phone call to have his bags stored for him. A valet tells him that someone has already taken his bags to hold for him. Buck becomes frantic as he thinks his equipment is now stolen, but it gets revealed that his old boss Steve Plank was the one to take them. Scene changes to Rayford and Hattie as she has to answer the phone that is ringing on her desk. Rayford takes out a pocket-sized New Testament that has the Psalms from the Old Testament added to it. We get told that Rayford wanted to read some of his favorite psalms to calm his nerves over meeting Nikolai. Supposedly the psalm he likes is Psalm 91. It starts off simple enough, praising his God, but then it goes on to describe the reader killing his enemies while not being hurt in any way. This sounds really cute on the surface, but cherry-picking leaves out that God uses the enemy to punish unfaithful believers. A good example I like to point to is Isaiah 59:19. This is one of many verses in the Bible that have been mistranslated because translators didn't like the original meaning. If we translate from the Hebrew, the literal meaning, the verse reads as, "When, like a flood, the enemy comes, the Spirit of God empowers them." This would make sense considering the context of the verses where the prophet Isaiah is describing God judging Israel for not being faithful to him. However, the idea that God would strengthen the enemy in order to punish people does not fit the Christian idea of a loving God. So the verse was changed to turn God from the vengeful God into a protector God. It becomes comical that there Jesus said not one jot or tittle changes until everything is fulfilled, yet the scholars have no problem ignoring that and change the Bible as they see fit. The scene ends with Hattie telling Rayford that Nikolai will see him now. Scene changes to Buck and we get more foolishness from him. The rabbi continues his history lesson as he tells how the original temple was destroyed and later rebuilt and renamed Harold's Temple. The rabbi assumes Buck knows about all of this and Buck says he knows nothing. The rabbi asks how a religious reporter could not know about Herod's temple. Buck comments that he is a pinch hitter on this story and the rabbi responds incredulously. Buck mocks the rabbi by pointing out he had previously said he was a racquetball player but has no idea what a pinch hitter is. The rabbi corrects him by stating that the term is used in baseball, not racquetball. What happened to Buck being the smartest guy in the room and the supposed world's best reporter? The rabbi continues with his history lesson and moves on to the Dome of the Rock being built there. Buck asks why the Muslims agreed to move it and the rabbi responds by saying only someone like the Messiah could do that. That was why he considers Nikolai to be the Messiah. Scene changes to Rayford and Nikolai as they meet face to face. Rayford feels calm because in his mind, the same one that imagined the affair with Hattie, he pretends that his friends are praying for him. He also has his mind clogged with the fake promises of the Psalms. Nikolai makes errors in logic trying to explain how Rayford knows but has never met Haim before. It's akin to the movie Spaceballs when Darth Helmet says, "I am your father's, brothers, nephews, cousins, former roommate." So what does that make us? Absolutely nothing. This basically describes the whole scene as being absolutely nothing. Nikolai is again trying to get Rayford to agree to be his pilot after Rayford has already agreed after being blackmailed by the owner of the company he works for. I mean, how many times does Rayford have to agree to fly the damn plane before they stop asking? Scene changes back to Buck as the rabbi reminds him to pay for the cab. Buck agrees and makes a joke by saying that he won't pay for his flight. The rabbi says, "Now that you mention it." Again keeping to the stereotype that Jews are cheap. I guess this passes for humor among Christian pastors/authors. The story here keeps jumping back and forth between Rayford and Buck. Buck starts off calling Steve and yelling at him for taking his bag, but Steve changes the topic. With Rayford he gets shown the new plane as Nikolai walks him through it. To Buck it keeps getting mentioned that the pilot, being Rayford, when the disappearances happened is there talking to Nikolai, and Buck pretends to not know it was Rayford. With Rayford, Nikolai offers him a drink, but Rayford refuses and says he no longer drinks. The chapter ends with Rayford arriving home and Chloe waiting for Buck to call her. This ends chapter 13 of Childish Force. See you next time for chapter 14.